I mean, Brody was an utter wrong'un when he first arrived, wasn't he? A mean and manipulative resident of the Young Offenders Institute. Dylan Wilson's, Liam McShane, found himself in. Brody was equal parts brain and brawn, using a combination of insidious scheming and violence to maintain control. As we got to know him, though, we learned that he was very much a product of his environment. While his mum, Lou Farrell Hegarty, had a heart buried deep under her viciousness, his alleged dad, Mick Joe Layton, was rotten to the core, and even when Brody discovered that his real dad was in fact Kit Green, Jacob Roberts, he spun even further out of control. Mick ended up with a long stretch behind bars, even longer after he broke out for a spell, for killing lovable copper, Craig Tinker, Colson Smith, while Lou also ended up being set down after bashing local bad lad Gary Windass, Mikey North, and with a strained relationship with his biodad, Brody, and his sisters, Joni and Shanice, Savannah Pennington and Molly Kilduff, were all alone. Enter Sally and Tim Metcalf, Sally Diniver and Joe Duttine. The Metcalfs welcomed the Michaelis kids into their home, fostering all three and, at last, providing them with a stable, loving and crime-free home. Admittedly, moving in with Tim and Sal didn't instantly soften all of Brody's rough edges. He and Dylan were a little too eager to get involved in Carl Webster's, Jonathan Howard, car theft racket, but the boy of today is much more pleasant than he's ever been. Well, until now anyway. Quite understandably, Brody was incredibly impressed by the flashy arrival of charismatic newcomer, Idris Nazir, Junade Khan, who immediately began grooming him as an apprentice of sorts. Brody's also not blind to Idris' darker side, having witnessed him walling up poor Damo, Jake Perry, who owed him money. Brody's new boss encounters some trouble next week, when his tenant, Abby Webster, Sally Carmen Dettine, ends up taking her young son to hospital as a result of the amount of mold in the flat. As Idris laments the situation to Brody, they're clocked by Abby herself, who later tells a horrified Sally that she saw Brody bundling a man into a car. She pales further when he hands her some cash to put toward housekeeping. But what has Idris gotten Brody involved in? The Cobbles have seen their fair share of shocking crimes over the years, but nothing prepares Weatherfield for the moment Brody finally loses control. Haunted by guilt, anger, and the fear of losing everything, Brody's inner demons push him toward a decision that could destroy not only his future but the lives of everyone around him. For weeks, Brody has been struggling to keep his emotions hidden. Friends notice he's quieter than usual, while his family assumes he's simply dealing with pressure. Behind closed doors, however, he's fighting a battle with himself. Every conversation feels like an attack, every setback another reminder that the world has turned against him. As tensions rise, Brody becomes convinced that someone is deliberately trying to ruin his life. Whether it's misunderstandings, betrayal, or his own paranoia, he starts believing there's only one way to make people finally listen. That dangerous mindset leads him to commit an act nobody saw coming. The shocking ordeal begins on what appears to be an ordinary afternoon. A heated confrontation quickly spirals out of control, leaving Brody panicked and desperate. Instead of walking away, he makes a split-second decision that changes everything, forcing his terrified victim into a vehicle before speeding away from Weatherfield. The disappearance sends shockwaves across the street. Within minutes, worried relatives begin calling around after realizing their loved one has vanished. Phones go unanswered, messages remain unread, and panic spreads rapidly through the community. Police are alerted as residents gather outside, desperately sharing information and trying to piece together what happened. Nobody can believe Brody could be responsible. Some refuse to accept it, insisting there's been a mistake. Others admit they noticed warning signs for weeks but never imagined things would escalate so dramatically. Meanwhile, Brody finds himself trapped by his own actions. What began as an impulsive attempt to gain control quickly turns into a nightmare. His captive is frightened but surprisingly calm, urging Brody to think about what he's doing before it's too late. Those words strike a nerve. For the first time since the kidnapping began, Brody's confident exterior starts to crack. He realizes he isn't the hardened criminal he convinced himself he needed to become. Instead, he's a scared young man making increasingly disastrous choices. The emotional exchanges between kidnapper and hostage become the heart of the storyline. Rather than focusing solely on danger, the tense scenes explore Brody's deteriorating mental state. Years of bottled-up resentment, disappointment, and loneliness come pouring out as he admits he feels invisible. He doesn't believe anyone truly understands him. His victim listens carefully, refusing to fuel his anger. Instead, they remind Brody that every person has moments where life feels impossible, but crossing certain lines creates pain that can't easily be undone. Back in Weatherfield, the search intensifies. Police officers begin tracing CCTV footage, while neighbors organize their own search parties. Familiar faces from Coronation Street unite, putting aside old feuds in the hope of bringing the missing person home safely. Rumors spread across the community. Some believe Brody has fled the country. Others fear the situation may end in tragedy. Every passing hour increases the pressure on officers racing against time. Brody, meanwhile, is running out of options. Prison, public shame, and losing everyone he cares about finally begins to sink in. He stares at his reflection, barely recognizing the frightened person looking back. The darkness that once seemed powerful now feels overwhelming. As emotions reach breaking point, Brody faces the biggest decision of his life. Will he continue down the path of destruction, or will he find the courage to surrender before someone gets hurt? His captive makes one final emotional plea. "You're not beyond saving," they insist. "But every minute you wait makes it harder to come back." Those words linger in Brody's mind. Tears replace anger as he realizes the person he's been fighting isn't everyone else, it's himself. The dramatic climax unfolds in an abandoned industrial building on the outskirts of Weatherfield, where police finally close in after receiving a crucial tip. Armed officers surround the area while negotiators attempt to reach Brody before panic takes over. Inside, Brody knows there's nowhere left to run. With flashing blue lights reflecting through broken windows, he quietly opens the door, helping his shaken hostage to safety before raising his hands in surrender. The emotional moment leaves everyone speechless. Relatives rush forward to embrace the rescued victim, while Brody is led away in handcuffs, unable to hide his overwhelming regret. Even the arrest feels bittersweet. Although justice has been served, many residents can't stop wondering whether Brody's life could have taken a different path if someone had recognized his struggles sooner. The aftermath promises lasting consequences throughout Coronation Street. Families are left traumatized, friendships are tested, and Brody must confront the devastating impact of his choices. His journey toward redemption, if redemption is even possible, will be far more difficult than the crime itself. This gripping storyline explores more than suspense. It examines how fear, isolation, and untreated emotional turmoil can lead ordinary people to make catastrophic decisions. Rather than presenting Brody as simply a villain, it reveals the heartbreaking consequences of allowing darkness to take control. As Weatherfield slowly recovers, one question remains hanging over the cobbles. Can Brody ever forgive himself for the day he became the very person he feared most? Or has one desperate act changed his life forever? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Coronation Street News 24.